Imagine you're going to work or you're going to school. You live in Hiroshima. You're a Japanese person. Like, it's one of the few cities that hasn't been like bombed to shit. It's 8:15 in the morning, and then you look over. There's a flash up above one of the hospitals. The bomb explodes. 130,000 people were killed by the blast wave and the firestorm. It's 180 million degrees in the explosion, and at that heat, fat melts, bones are charred, eyeballs burst, bodies crumble into toxic dust. 90% of people within 500 meters of the explosion are dead. The ground temperature reaches over 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And those further away, they had their skin burned. People's faces were burned off. Their skin was charred with the patterns of their clothing. Like, you could see patterns of their kimonos based on the light and dark patterns. It was burned onto their skin. The survivors were poisoned and their hair fell out. Their eyes were scorched white. Soft tissues in the stomach and the guts fall out. And then even decades later, thousands of survivors had died from various cancers. And radiation poisoning is one of the worst ways to die. It's because it's incredibly agonizing. And 90% of the doctors and nurses in Hiroshima were killed in the initial explosion, which means that most of the people who died, they died in agony.
Medical care of any kind.
Yeah, they died without any care. They died in pain. And then the survivors, their future children suffered birth defects. And so here's the thing.
There's a documentary called White Light, Black Rain,
Mm-hmm.
which is extremely good, and it was part of my radicalization story because it really turned America into a monster for me. But in it, they talk about how all the people that died in the bombings, but all of the children that were orphaned as a result of people dying in the bombings. And these orphans, they didn't have anywhere to go because everybody was trying to rebuild the city, their homes, their lives, their whatevers. And so they would basically go to the outskirts of town and they would try to scavenge food, but all the food had radiation. And so they would end up dying of radiation poisoning, or they would give it to their children.
%2 of the fissile material in that bomb was actually detonated. So that was 2% of its full power. The B-83 nuclear bomb, which is the mainstay of the U.S. nuclear arsenal today in 2018, is 80 times more powerful than that at full capacity. And then they did it again in or like the next week, I think, at Nagasaki. That killed 74,000 people.
3 days later.
Yeah,
the
that
first
sounds
bombing
right.
was the 6th, the second was the 9th on August.
Yeah, there's 74,000 people by the end of the year at Nagasaki. And so we have to retell this story of they dropped the bomb to save lives because it's really frightening to grasp the idea that the government and the military and the powers that be that govern our lives, that are currently in charge of everything, would sacrifice so many innocent lives and not just kill people, but just do some of the most horrific things that have happened to human beings. They would do that for a political bargaining chip. They wouldn't do that to end the war. They weren't doing it to end the war. They were doing it to strong-arm another country that they thought they were going to be fighting.
Strong-arm a fucking country that would never do that to humans.